Have you ever encountered something paranormal? Story 1. A few years ago, one night at around 3 a.m., my wife and I were sleeping, and I feel myself slowly waking up from a really deep sleep. My eyes started lifting up, and as soon as they focused on the lamp on my dresser, it slid off and shattered on the floor. My wife and I quickly sat up and looked at each other, horrified at the startling noise. We agreed we would clean it in the morning and went back to sleep. The next morning when we woke up, the lamp was at the foot of the bed, about 5 feet from where it fell, completely intact and not broken at all. We are still trying to make sense of it. Later, when we told the others why we couldn't find them, they said that there isn't a chain there. The next morning, when waking there, we saw there was no femc, or even anything that could look like a fence. Story 2. From 3 until 13, I lived in a nice home out near Yosemite National Park. Nothing super spectacular about it. 4 bedrooms, a den, dining room, the norm. Just down a little dirt road, and if you've ever been around those parts, you'll know, miles away from civilization. My whole childhood, I was visited by this girl in white. She never spoke. I would just wake up at night and see or feel her there. I asked my dad, and his response every time was, "The men in our family can see ghosts." My rationale of this, I'm a skeptic, I remain that to this day, but the story I'm telling made me question, was that we never once had contact with the Byers, only knew them by name. The Byers had a son who went to the same school as our old neighbors, dear friends of the family, and the son apparently came to school without sleep repeatedly, complaining that there was a girl who watched him at night and that he needed to get out. Ugh, shivers up my spine every time I remember this. Answer. I am the eldest of 3 siblings, and of course, as we moved house to house, I got the basement bedroom most times. I was fine with this being the eldest. This let me have privacy. The last home I lived in with my family before I moved out on my own, I spent 5 years in the basement bedroom. Through those 5 years, I experienced amazing night terrors and sleep paralysis on a very regular basis. There were a few incidents where I would wake up and the closet on the far side of the room would be open just a crack, and I'd stare at it knowing I had closed it, and it would creak open just a touch. On sound-specific nights, I woke up, not suddenly like something jarred me, but just kind of rolled over, and at the foot of my bed saw a girl standing there. She looked very young, black hair, dark dress, and she did not move, didn't make a sound, and I never could make out a face. Both times I reverted immediately back to being 5 years old and hid my face under the sheets while my heart rate went full marathon pace. Eventually I would feel like it wasn't there anymore, and I'd peek out and it would be gone. My parents are not believers in anything paranormal, and I never told them anything thinking they would think I'm crazy. I chalked it up to night terrors and extraordinarily realistic dreams during paralysis. I moved out, and far away, my next sibling in line got the coveted adult room in the basement, and life went on. I had a few Christmas visits and other holiday runs, and at one point I remember going into that room to get a chair and seeing the closet door nailed shut from the outside. I didn't question it, as I thought, there's no way it's related to my experience. Not long after that, on another return visit home, I went and checked the door to that closet. The nails were gone, but in place was a padlock, and there was clearly bundles of sage sweetgrass hanging above the closet and above the only exterior window in. I worked up the nerve to ask my mom, "What's the deal with the basement?" And she reluctantly told me that my brother had seen things come in and out of the closet, and that he had a girl appear beside his bed and terrorize him on several occasions. Now, no joke, I still haven't told them what I saw. TLDR, basement bedroom growing up is either haunted or has some environmental thing going on in it to cause night terrors in more than just me. Story 3. The only one I have is when I was in 4th grade. When I was little, I would always sleep with my door open. I went through a phase where I would wake up between 3-4 a.m. every night, and every single night I would hear footsteps walking up my stairs, around my living room, through my dining room, across my kitchen and down my hallway. They would always stop right before my doorway, then turn around and go back into the basement. But one night they didn't stop. What I saw was a shadow of a little girl boy, couldn't tell, walk right in front of my doorway, look at me for a few seconds, then it walked away, back down the stairs. I slept with the door closed the next night. Answer. When I was a child, we lived on a house that we could hear footsteps on the stairway every single night. At the same home, my mother saw my sister during the day having a long conversation with someone. Invisible. At some point, my sister fell in the floor and said, "Stop pushing me." My sister was about 2.5 years old. My mother was so terrified that we had to move days later. Story 4. It started to get less frequent as I grew older, and now I do not experience it anymore. I've brushed it aside as a recurring nightmare until only recently I've learned that my sister would experience the exact same thing when she was younger as well. It's not the scariest thing, but it does send shivers down my spine trying to comprehend this. Answer. This sounds like standard childhood fever delirium. I used to get similar hallucinations to do with rising intensity and volume too. I used to see machinery in factories in my fever that would get louder and more intense until my brain couldn't cope with the size and volume. I also used to get perception errors where things really close would seem far away, and vice versa. It was very unpleasant. The fact that it's common doesn't diminish its otherworldly horror, but it wore off as I got older. It's hereditary too. My father used to get it when he was a kid, but much worse, so that it would eventually trigger a seizure. Story 5. A friend of mine was taking a picture of herself and her daughter kissing, and in the background you can clearly see a figure that was not there. She had ghost experts come in and check around the house and found nothing. After some research, they found one of the previous owners was a mortician or ran a funeral home or something. I have known this girl for years, and it would completely shock me if this was fabricated, as I saw how upset she was and how much money she dished out for experts. They no longer live there. Edit. Last time I posted this, people had some questions, so let me try and... Nothing this extreme happened again in the house while they were occupying it. IRC, the white orbs that you can see on her face and in the background are also something supernatural. Answer, I'd at very least call bullshit on the not a light bulb part, as that would be the most certain place for anyone to place a lamp in that room. Also, even if it was true that there was no girl in the room, it could still be some sort of multiple exposure going on, which I highly doubt considering the low quality of camera. Chromatic aberration, high noise, still underexposure. Maybe some image editing genius can tell you what this is about. Story 6. The entire ordeal was over in less than a second. I still don't know if it really happened or if my brain was just playing me tricks. Story 7. I posted this story before in another thread like this. My story may not be scary, but it is paranormal. My grandfather died when my mother was pregnant with my younger brother. My brother has my granddad's name, and we always jokingly said he had Grandpa's soul. One day, I was about 14 and my brother was 7. My family went on a walk in the forest. We were walking for a while when there was a small path to the left of us that led to a small field. My brother held my mom's arm and said, Mom, I want to go there. That's where I have fun. That's where the wonderful music plays," my mother had tears in her eyes as she explained to us that in her youth my grandpa used to play saxophone in a Bavarian music group, and every summer they played at a small festival on that field. Edit, spelling. We'd always ask him, "Who are you talking to, Jack?" And he's always point out to the empty cemetery and say, "Them, there," and keep waving at them from the car window. He was far too young to know about passing or ghosts at this point. He was barely able to make full sentences. Story 8. She was a rescue, and I bought her as a sense of security when I'm home alone. I'm a female, and I could never get her to bark at anyone. I dismiss her barking as odd, but I finish cooking and eat. I start to clean and turn the sink on because it takes forever to get hot. But right when I turned around, the sink turned off on its own. Again, I think it's odd, but I don't really think it's worth freaking out over. The hair on the back of my dog is standing up straight, but no one is home and it's midnight, so I figure I'd just tough it out, even though I was beginning to get a little spooked. After cleaning, I go in the bathroom and sit on the sink to pluck my eyebrows. My bathroom was small, with the sink immediately to your right as you enter, with the toilet next to it. Bathtub at the end, and toilet paper dispenser directly across the toilet. It was a really narrow room so you could reach the TP while sitting on the toilet. So the way I was sitting, the toilet paper dispenser was behind me. After 2 to 3 minutes, I hear a weird noise behind me, so I turn around and I shoot you not. The whole roll of toilet paper was unraveling fast as fudge, like someone was pulling it. I noped the fudge out of that bathroom. The door was closed and it had no windows, so it couldn't have been a breeze. I put a leash on my dog and ran out of that apartment faster than Usain. I'm talking about a good 5-10 meters of toilet paper. After that day, I never had an odd experience quite like that one ever again. But one of my roommates did mention that a few times he'd come home and find every door and cabinet in the place open. When he'd specifically remembered closing them and leaving them that way when he left. This was when I was on vacation out of state, and our other roommate was still deployed. I wrote this all on mobile, so excuse any spelling errors. Answer. I had a toilet paper roll do this once. It freaked me out, but after I messed with it, I realized that it was so easy for that roll to get going, and it just seemed to get faster until it started to get small. The toilet paper roll was slightly lopsided, and that's what did it. It wouldn't do it if the cardboard in the middle was perfectly round. Story 9. I've posted this before, but what the hey? Okay, this may take a bit of doing, so bear with me. Army base, Soest, West Germany, as was. A still, dark autumn evening. Must have been warm because it was the kind of temperature you don't notice. Me, 13, and a mate, 15, just dossing around before I had to go in. Behind the flats where we live was a green area with a play area. Only one street light, so it was very dark compared to our street, and the well-lit main route through the camp, which was about 100 meters away from where walking. No traffic, nothing, it was never busy, and this was on a weekend evening, so literally, no traffic, and no one out and about as far as we could tell. Which suited 2 teenagers just fine. Thanks. Bear with me. This is important. So we're heading between our respective blocks of flats and into the darkened park area, and we stop dead. On the main road, moving right to left, was a figure, vaguely person-shaped but undulating and waving like cloth underwater. It glided along the middle of the road. Based on what it obscured behind it as it moved, I'd estimate it to be between 8-10 foot. But at the very least, it was larger than average man size. Just blackness. It seemed like a lifetime as I soaked this detail up. In reality, it couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 seconds. I whispered, breathed, "Do you see that?" My friend, in a whisper, replied, "Yes." And the fudge thing changed direction. Towards us. The last image I have, before we broke and ran, was of it rising up as it came over the curb. This is what makes it real for me. This is something that had mass, that obeyed at least something of the physical world. It moved from the brightly lit road into the same darkness in which we stood. We broke and ran for our lives, back onto our street and into my mate's block. The fudge then bolted back to his own home, leaving me wondering how the hell I was going to get to my block. After a while, the fear of the repercussions from my dad for being late overrode my fear of what might be out there in the night, so I ran, eyes straight ahead, the 10 or so meters to my own front door. I was in too much trouble for being late to ever say anything when I got home. Sometimes, when I'm walking and the night is warm and still and quiet, I think about it and I wonder what I'd do if I ever saw it again. Run away, or face it down and maybe solve a 30-year-old mystery. Honestly, I just don't know. Story 10. We moved into a house and everything was really quite the first 6 months or so. The neighbors told us that the people who lived there before had moved after their teenage son died in a motorcycle accident. Then, after that first 6 months, my dad died, not in the house. After that, stuff started to happen. I would have friends sleep over, and one night my friend woke me up because she said there was a young guy standing in my bathroom. So I went and checked, and nothing was there. Over the next few years, just about any friends that stayed overnight had said they saw the tall, blonde young guy walking around the house. We did have a few other things happen, like a wine glass was on the counter and it broke. No one was touching it. It just shattered on the counter. Another time during the winter, we had the heater on, and my room was always the warmest in the house, and it was ice cold as you walked across my bedroom to the bathroom that was connected. The creepiest thing was when my boyfriend was sleeping on the couch in the middle of the night, and he said he woke up to a young guy pushing him off onto the floor. He said the guy didn't say anything, but my boyfriend at the time knew that he had to leave, and he did. He wouldn't stay at my place after that. Edit. I have gotten a lot of crap about the wine glass, so I will explain in better detail. My mom had a huge collection of glassware. She had so many there wasn't anywhere to put it anymore, so we just set them on the counter. The wine glass had been sitting there for a long time. No one had touched it. It hadn't just come out of the dishwasher or anything like that. Basically, she bought it, put it on the counter, and never touched it again. When it broke, no one was near it. Only me and my mom were there, and we were both at least 10 feet away. Could it have been something like a crack in the glass, maybe? But at the time, it startled us, and we thought it was weird. I was just sharing one of the many things that happened. Answer. We did have a few other things happen, like a wine glass was on the counter and it broke. No one was touching it, it just shattered on the counter. This happened to me once when I tended the bar. I put the glass down, turned around to get something, and when I turned back to grab the glass, it shattered just as I was about to reach for it. Turned out the glass was just really warm, and it shattered when I placed it on a cold surface. Story 11. This is one of 2 paranormal experiences I've had that I have a hard time wrapping my head around. It's a long read, but worth it. I've suffered from insomnia as far back as I can remember. I was in 2nd grade and it was really early in the morning, I think around 5 or so. I had a little TV on my nightstand and was definitely watching Low TR on VHS. I had the volume up super loud because my ceiling fan always made a ruckus throughout the night. I was super into the movie when all of the sound around me started to slowly fade away. I remember I became confused and reached to turn my TV up, thinking it had broken. But then I realized the sound of the fan had faded with it. The only way I can describe it is comparing it to someone turning the volume down on a car radio. I was suddenly overwhelmed by an intense feeling of euphoria. I have never experienced anything like it. I absolutely cannot describe how utterly at peace I felt. I was able to comprehend what was happening, and then it clicked in my head that I was dying. Keep in mind that I'm in second grade, so this is a pretty intense conclusion, but I just knew. I rolled over onto my back, ready to and excited to accept my fate. That was when I saw it. There was a large white figure in my doorway, just hovering and pulsating a white aura. I quickly panicked and began calling out for my brother. His room was across the hall. The figure glided to the end of my bed and just sat there, watching. I'm not really sure how much time passed, but the figure suddenly vanished, sound came back, and the euphoria disappeared. I jumped out of bed and ran into my brother's room, where I practically flew into his bed. He woke up, and when he saw how panicked I was, he began to panic as well. I was hysterical and just kept telling him it was a ghost. We did what any other kids would do and hid under the covers. After a while, we got anxious, and I bravely made a peephole. I'm the blanket to check the time on the clock, hoping that it would be daylight soon. 5:30, the clock read 5:30 in the morning. Then the phone rang, and it rang and rang and rang. Me and my brother started to panic even more. Then silence. Once again, it began to ring and ring and ring. We jumped out of bed and took turns running from light switch to light switch until we had a light path to the living room. Our house was 5,000 square foot. This was not an easy task. We got to the living room and watched cartoons until my mom woke up. She was livid, yelling at us for being up so early. I told her I saw a ghost, which only made her more upset. My brother, who was always tormenting my irrational fears, got mad at her and started telling her this wasn't a joke, and it wasn't my imagination. I started telling her to check the phone, because I saw the ghost around 5:30, and it must have been the ghost calling. Kid logic. She went,